Let's start with the Prime Minister possibly changing the Religious Discrimination Bill. The Australian reports the proposed laws will likely face further amendments after Scott Morrison proposed revision to prohibit the discrimination of sexual orientation or gender identity. The Prime Minister was responding to a decision by Brisbane Christian College, who handed out contracts requiring students to agree to specific gender roles and denounce homosexuality. Michael, has the PM picked the wrong culture war issue to pursue here? Is this legislation going to end up being a big own goal?
Look, I think this is an extremely difficult issue for anybody in politics to handle. I think we all agree that any legislation protecting religious freedom and freedom against discrimination for religious beliefs is absolutely essential. However, at the same time, I mean, any proposition that says that somebody, in this particular case, a student, should be expelled from a school because because of their sexuality or their their own personal challenges in terms of beliefs is really, I think, quite extreme. I think there's got to be a balance here, and that balance, I think, the Prime Minister is actually heading in the right direction on this. I think you do need to protect students. However, I also make the point that if you're a parent and you're sending a child to a school that is a religious school, you have to be very clear that there are principles that underpin that religious school, and you're adhering to the teaching ethos of that school by sending your child there. But the balance should be drawn. Nobody should be discriminated against. Discrimination in this particular case is against people that try to discriminate on the basis of religion. And that shouldn't be an excuse to then discriminate against people that have their own issues in terms of sexuality and any other thing for that matter. So I think it is a complex issue, but I think the Prime Minister, depending on the wording of the legislation and the amendments to the legislation, is on sound ground here, because nobody wants a child, and they are children. We're talking about high school, pretty young people, 13, 14, 15, before you even get into the senior years, that could be challenged by these issues. So I think he's on sound ground.
What do you think about this, Tina? Is the proposed amendments that are being talked about here, is that going to satisfy the small L Liberals, or are they still going to be troubled by this legislation?
I think they're still going to be troubled by it, Rita. There's already been considerable amendments to this bill. I mean, it's a bit of a nightmare, actually. And, the Prime Minister's trying to do his best, but you're never going to be able to please everybody. As Michael said, it is complex, but, there are Christian schools and schools for particular reasons. I think what's going to happen if laws and these bills are imposed upon these types of schools, parents are just going to teach their kids at home. I think they've had enough. There's so many restrictions, and I think that's the way it's heading, Rita. It's so complex. But good on the Prime Minister for trying. But sometimes you can't please the left-leaning people of any party. The more you give them, the more they want.
Well, I tell you, when you're a broad church, sometimes it's really hard to stand for anything. If you're trying to please everybody, you kind of lose sight of your principles.